Welcome to today's JCon. Um, this is my talk, Migrating Java EE to JakartaEE 10 and the challenges or opportunities. Okay, so let's get started. So, who am I? My name is Buhake, not Buhake. Everybody's mispronounced my name, but it's officially Buhake Sindi. So, I've been doing enterprise Java development for over 17 years. So, but above other things like DevOps and production support and all these other technicalities on the side, but as long as it's Java or Java enterprise related, it's fall under the full stack Java engineering role. On top of that, I run a non-profit called DevOps for Kids South Africa. So I go to places and schools where kids do not have ability to learn coding because the school do not have services or computer centers to teach coding, or the teachers do not even have coding experiences. So I'm trying to do free events to get kids into coding. And I'm also a Jakarta EE ambassador. So, and this is where you can actually find me. You feel free to email me, and my Twitter handle is @LeeGentleman. It's publicly available, so you can also DM me. I don't really block DMs. So, okay. So migrating your apps. The primary reason why people will migrate your apps is, one, if you are probably in a publicly listed company, so you have IT auditors that needs to report to the stakeholders and whatever. So they would like to have like the product licenses up to date. So your application will have to be migrated according to the service level agreement that they would have with specific service providers or stuff like that. So application that's got outdated technology or that needs to conform to IT service level agreement or requirement specified by auditors, you will mostly get a request saying, you know what, keep it up to date. Or if there's security vulnerabilities like the 0-day vulnerability that happened like not so long ago, which forced most of our applications to be upgraded from Java EE 7 to Java EE 8 in some instances. Some instances we've managed to get to Java EE 9, but obviously that depends on also the enterprise licenses that we have with our service providers. So like some of our services are running on JBoss EAP. So based on those licenses, we have to conform to that. And also if most people are trying to upgrade to the cloud, so Jakarta EE 10 focuses now more on cloud native technology. So if you migrate to Jakarta EE 10, you one step closer to go to cloud native, deploy your application either to AWS on a Kubernetes cluster. Bob's your uncle. Okay, so in my experiences, there's no silver bullet to migration. But that's the case, feel free to ask questions any moment. Yeah, so there's no silver bullet. Not everybody is up to date with the latest technology. So we found there's two approaches. Some are reactive. So some would rather do the migration and learn along the way and find out what's going on, but at least there is lesson learned and the things went live and they've migrated. Some people know already that they have to migrate upfront because as technologies get older, or as every year they will get audited, they will know like certain things needs to be removed and certain things needs to be migrated across. So they will take a proactive approach, right, rather than a reactive where they get told or something happens and then you move to into migration. And if you went to Adam Beam's talk yesterday, he spoke about the 6 R's, so strategies like rehosting and replatforming, repurchasing, refactoring, decommissioning your old application or retaining it. So your application is still valid, it still does what the business requires, but you'll revisit it over time. Maybe that's probably like to be cost effective. So that's mostly talks to like your IT managers, and when they look at the cost implication of migrating. So Java, enterprise Java came from a very long way. From, I don't know how many of you have done EJB 1 or 2, and the nightmare it was, and you needed a specialized like IDEs or tools to actually debug the applications, which was a pain. And there was no like XML. There was XML configuration, but trying to debug EJBs at the time, whether it was local or remote, and yeah. So from Java EE to Jakarta EE, you can see like the release dates are very much consistent. So almost every year, you get a newer version of Jakarta EE. Unlike back in the day where you would get like Java EE 5 to 6 took about 3 years, and then another 5 years to Java EE 7, and then Spring would get all the releases like every year. So there's even an old article that like Spring went to Java EE 7, and then a year later there was no application servers running Java EE 7. So Spring was already there 1 year ahead, and we were still waiting. So there's been a tit for tat. That's what's happening. So, but with the migration to Jakarta EE 8, everything has been kind of consistent. So you kind of expect what newer technologies will come out, and certain APIs that are getting removed, and it's a community-based framework, so everybody can contribute, everybody can chip in and decide what needs to be added into Jakarta EE, and hopefully they create a consistent API for everyone. So for today, Jakarta EE has a visible release cycle, and they adapt now quickly to latest technologies like microprofile, uses Jakarta EE, certain Jakarta EE APIs to be able for you to create cloud native applications. And then there's also now trying to integrate Jakarta data, which Emily spoke yesterday, and JNoSQL. That's the future potential implementation of the framework for NoSQL databases. And also, they're now quick to adopt to the latest JDK. So Jakarta EE 11 might go to adopt Java 17 and Java 20 to up to Java 21. And then they might release it a bit later in, I said 2023, but it's supposed to be 2024. So, Java 11 is coming out in September, and then Jakarta EE 11 in 2024, so that it passes all the TCK, so all the tests for all the vendors who wants to implement a Jakarta EE 11 compatible product or app servers. So it gives them time to upgrade to Java 21 and then ship it, and then you can migrate your application to the latest JDK. Okay, how many of you are Spring developers? Geez, like half the room. Okay, so yes, we're not enemies. So Java 6.1, which is coming in November, will support Jakarta EE 10. So Spring is always embracing Jakarta EE basically. So as you can see, the latest version of 6 supports Jakarta EE 9. Oh, actually, yeah. So Jakarta EE 9. So they're not. So we kind of get aligned with. They kind of work together and get aligned with the specifications, so that everybody can be in a happy place and build the application with whatever framework that you currently interested in. So yeah, we're not enemies. I don't want to hear, oh, Spring is the best, and no, we kind of align. Yes, there are good features on Spring, but we're not enemies basically. Okay, so some technologies in Spring, there's basically simple, from servlets to CDI, with JPA, so Spring Data JPA uses Spring Data JDBC, all come from Jakarta EE APIs eventually. All right, so I did a survey like 2 weeks ago, trying to see how many of developers, what kind of where they are with Java in the enterprise today, and it was interesting. So many are using Java 17, which is cool, because I've seen most applications are still running on Java 8. I do not know why people want to jump to Java 11 at least, but that's what it is. But at least everybody is quickly adopting. Almost half are using Jakarta EE7, but 75% of people are on Spring. Geez, you guys are many, yeah? And people still run on Tomcat, which is, but anyway, I was expecting like Glassfish or Wildfly to win, but Tomcat seems to be king, and he's been here for like 20 years, or over 20 years. So. And most cloud native applications are running on Spring Boot. But in essence, if your application runs on an app server, you're already using Jakarta EE anyway. So, but it was an interesting. Okay, so how do we migrate the apps from Java EE to Jakarta EE? Anybody still using Java EE before Jakarta EE, or have application that's still in production? Okay, one, and you and mixed. All right. Rule number 1, read the specification, because I've seen a lot of people making errors by taking advice from Stack Overflow, which is not wrong, but Stack Overflow answers specific problem-related questions. It does not mean that it's a silver bullet for every single problems. I was discussing with some of the guys yesterday at the dinner how there was a situation where we had an enterprise web application that ran Spring on its core for injection, but the front end was JSF. So every time there was a problem, JSF problem, the solution was a JSF-based solution, provided that the injection was Java EE CDI injected, not Spring CDI. And we got a client that phoned us and said, everybody on the floor sees the same data. And I wasn't into Spring at the time. So I get called, I said, fix it. I figured out a solution by reading the entire Spring source code. Because the documentation did help, but the specific problem had required me to read the source code to actually find out that the Spring CDI injection does not really conform with JSF, basically, because JSF and CDI and its transactions follows the Java EE standard. But anyway, so the specification, nowadays the JakartaEE or the Java EE specification is very detailed. So it's pretty much useful enough that once you read whatever you need, whatever specification that you need or frameworks, you can pretty much get what's happening under the hood without worrying about which implementation the app server is actually running on. And then if you run your application on an app server, instead of you doing the Uber jar, you can actually get the JakartaEE 10 application server. So this I got recently on the website. So this is already approved, compliant JakartaEE 10 so far. There are more on the way, so we don't know when. So might as well always check the site to check what's available and what's compliant. For those that got enterprise licenses, and I know most of them usually have the delay because they got the timelines and service levels agreements with the client. So sometimes you'll have to wait a bit longer. So that will be a discussion between you, your team, your organization, and the team and the people that handles the agreement between you and your supplier. Another thing is to update your POM. So on the left, you see we used to have the Java EE API, and then now we move to Jakarta Platform and JakartaEE API. But the scope still remains the same. So it's just one simple change on the POM XML to move from Java EE to JakartaEE. And then this is where you do the bulk of the work. Rename your imports. So your JavaX dot whatever package namespace will change to Jakarta dot whatever namespace it is. So hypothetically, if you had a javax.io, it will be jakarta.io. So the package structure doesn't change. It's just that JavaX changed to Jakarta. And once you get there, anything that's still got the JavaX package name will break. So since JakartaEE 9, they never made it backward compatible with every JavaX libraries or modules. So if you want to still use JavaX packages, the last one was Jakarta EE 8. So you can play around with Jakarta EE. It still supports Java X, but once you go from 9, yeah. And also, it does not break your 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 code at all. It's just renaming your imports in most places. And then your XML schema. So most enterprise application has some XML somewhere. Already, if you're using CDI, you already got an empty beans.xml. So you've already got one XML configuration somewhere. So you will change anything that's got that JCP namespace would be just renamed. Everything else remains the same. Your versions would have to change. So as I said in the beginning, it is better to read the specification because every API has its own. The API has its version, its major version, the minor version, and that's also reflected into your XML schema. So the popular common ones will be your persistent.xml, web.xml. You are all familiar with all of them. So that's what you need to look out for. No. From Jakarta, okay, the question is this namespace necessary on Jakarta EE8? No, it's necessary from Jakarta EE9. So, okay, Jakarta EE9 did the major change. So they moved everything from the Java X namespace to Jakarta namespace. The only reason, the major reason for that is because the Java X namespace is, Java X is owned and copyrighted by Oracle. And since Oracle gave Java EE to Eclipse, the Eclipse group, they do not own the copyright to the word Java and Java X. So, yeah. So in future, every code that is written by Jakarta EE will not start with java.something or Java X anything. So so they had to conform for copyright reasons. And then also your properties files and your bootstrapping files, anything that's got java.anything will be renamed to Java X. So for example, your service extensions usually has Java namespaces or Java X namespaces initially. You just change your Java X to Jakarta dot whatever. But the packages kind of stay the same. It's just Java X to Jakarta. Primary example, this is how persistent XMLs looked with the Java X namespaces. This I took from Java EE7. So you'll see the XML namespace on line 3 is JCP, and then on the schema location you'll see JCP with persistence 2.1. The properties all have Java X, the persistence, and this is the same one with Jakarta. The namespace went from JCP to Jakarta EE, and we're using persistence 3.0, so we changed the version. Everything else is the same, and the property start with Jakarta, but everything else afterward is exactly the same as Java EE. And then once you have done all of that, then have fun. So I would suggest do full end-to-end testing. So if you're not familiar with integration or end-to-end testing, you'll have fun learning and playing around with these things, because ideally your application should work as is, but you always get some people who make errors like one or two all over the place. So you want to give yourself enough time to make sure that everything happens. We did the same thing when we migrated from Glassfish to Payara and Wildfly, just to ensure that our application works consistently on different application servers. And it didn't take us a week. Everything was consistent. Our test cases kind of worked properly. And yeah, it wasn't really a train smash for us, because we played around with Java EE for so long. We kind of like knew what to expect. All right. So, what are the challenges and opportunities when updating to JakartaEE? So, if you have what you call the huge monolith, that's like everything is in there all at once. Yeah, renaming will be a nightmare, but uh, but the good thing is you get to revisit old code that you had never seen like in 20 years. And hopefully understand what you wrote or what somebody else wrote but left the company, and you know but yeah, but there's good ideas. IntelliJ has support for Jakarta EE10. So when you change your POM to Jakarta EE10, it will, well, I've done this, but don't have IntelliJ here because I'm an Eclipse person. It will start prompting you like, these are the imports that failed, and there's an alternative report to fix it, and it's line by line. You'll see it's exactly the same. You just have to refactor, and it will auto fix it for you. And then your XMR, because the JCP are still valid and still active and still live, so the validation will always pass. But it will be up to you to just change and kind of manually. So dependency management. So if you have third-party libraries that uses Java EE, for example, like if you are heavily dependent on libraries that uses some Jakarta EE, like JSON binding or something that's still do with JPA, and they still got older version, would you have to wait for them to actually migrate theirs? So they probably have a different migration cycle to move from their current version to the latest version. Like we said, Spring is coming out in November with Jakarta EE10. So you'll have to wait until then. So if you have to migrate, you'll have to probably migrate when they have already migrated. So yeah, that's one discussion you'll have to talk with your manager to manage expectations. API deprecation. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I tried, JDBCs does not get affected. So if you worry about database and database drivers and whatever, they do not get affected because they're still under the Java package. So I tried to break it, and now because everybody is like, what about database? What about database? Nah, they don't get impacted. So if you worry about databases, you're fine. Um, if your if your application is really old and still use old technologies, I don't know if people still use Corba today, but Corba is long gone, and Jakarta EE10 do not have Corba at all. Uh, Old version of EJBs are gone, and they mostly focus on CDI and CDI Core and CDI Lite, and so you just have to be aware that if you want to take old Asian code and there's still Java EE and migrate, if there's old technology that's still there, they're still dependent, uh, either find something that does similar or follow one of the migration of part of rewriting certain modules to actually conform to the latest version. Okay. The opportunities. So Jakarta EE is basically, in code-wise, it's basically backward compatible. Not on runtime, but yeah. Uh, Basically, like I said, you just need to change the import and the namespaces, but ultimately your code will still look exactly the same. It's more enhanced when it runs on Jakarta EE10. So the migration shouldn't be like okay. From our experience, it's not really a huge learning curve in that aspect, and I haven't had any so far so good experiences where I had um, to rewrite code to actually adapt. Except from one instance where somebody wrote a standalone service um, that ran on a small VM, and what they did is they made it specific to Eclipse Link. They used JPA, but it was heavily relied on Eclipse Link. But it was an old, ancient Eclipse Link. I think was just when the JPA went to JPA 2, and so we took the exact same code, we moved it to to the latest version. We deployed it on the application server, and we couldn't figure out why the behavior of why we were getting some exception on JPA. And then we retried it on Eclipse Link, and it worked, and our application server had Hibernate, and the behavior was different. We found out that the code was written to conform to JPA 1 and not and they stuck to Eclipse Links at that version because that's the only thing that worked at the time, and they didn't want to break it. So we just took it out, removed certain configuration, and went to all annotative options, because then it was XML, so annotative version, and then we just the logic was exactly the same. We never touched it, and everything ran as smoothly as possible. Yesterday I heard about Open Rewrite, so yeah, I included Open Rewrite. So for those who has big applications that needs to migrate, Open Rewrite is a good automation tool that will actually do all the fix of basically your refactoring of your code. You can just dictate what needs to be refactored, and it will automate it for you. So instead of doing the whole manual way of playing with your IDE and trying to create scripts to actually have it sorted, there's Open Rewrite for that. So basically, the community has came again, they saw the problem, and they made it a nice, actually interesting tool to actually make it work. And you can now use Jakarta EE with improved performance and security features that it provides after you upgrade to Jakarta EE 10. So latest latest Java version, um, latest tools and features that come with Java, performance that you will get from your application server, that Java EE 10 compliant. You basically can leverage off that. So yeah, so that's also one of the added advantage. And if you want to go to the cloud, it is possible, because you can either break your application into a microservices level, which we've done before, and microprofile is also an extension of Jakarta EE with microprofile features added on top. So you can leverage of that, or you can take your application and deploy it into the cloud as is, into a container, and Bob's your uncle. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to do a demo, but I did the same demo last year, and I don't want to do it again and break it live. I have the code, but I'm like, I have to Google and fix it and get it all over running, but that's basically all that's required, and all that's, for my experience at least, the steps and the approach that I've taken to actually migrate the application over the years to the latest versions. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions? Yes, sir. Yes. I've heard of Eclipse Transformer when Eclipse officially announced uh, the future plans of Jakarta EE. I've not played with it myself. Well, I haven't had the troublesome of getting frustrated of the migration of applications. Uh, for me, it's been, well, nothing has broken enough in a way where my application requires me to go run around and say, you know what, let me use a third-party plugin. But for many people who are not fluent or comfortable using Java EE or Jakarta EE, yeah, I've heard of Transformer. Um, I'll have to play around with it to actually have a feel of what functionality it brings and what advantages it brings. But yes, I've heard of that. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, we we avoid bytecode manipulation at all costs. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Thank you, guys.